Around the World Lit Audio 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel García Márquez. Chapter 9. Full Narration Script. Channel Intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter Recap. In Chapter 8, José Arcadio returned covered in tattoos and married Rebecca immediately, to Ursula's practical objections and Pietro Crespi's 3 days without eating. Amaranta wrapped her hand in black cloth and never removed it. New people continued arriving from the war. A new priest arrived, straightforward, non-levitating, a relief. And Ursula began to perceive the pattern she could not yet articulate. We are all doing the same things that were done before us. Chapter 9. Chapter 9. The war ended badly. Not in the dramatic sense of a catastrophic defeat. The Liberal army had not been destroyed. The conservative government had not achieved the kind of total victory that ends conflicts decisively and permanently. The war ended in the way that long wars frequently end, with exhaustion on both sides, with a negotiated settlement that satisfied nobody, with the specific quality of a conclusion that everyone accepts not because it is right, but because the alternative is more of the same. Colonel Aureliano Buendía signed the Treaty of Neerlandia. He signed it in a village called Neerlandia, sitting across a table from the representatives of the conservative government and the other liberal commanders, and he put his name to an agreement that he understood, in the moment of signing, would be characterized by the people who had sent young men to fight as a betrayal. He was not wrong. The treaty gave the liberals almost nothing. The grievances that had started the war, the electoral fraud, the conservative monopoly on political power, the systematic exclusion of liberals from the institutions of the state, were addressed in the treaty with the vague language of documents that intend to appear to resolve things without actually resolving them. Aurelianos who had died for a political position came home having obtained, in exchange for their deaths, words on paper that meant what the government chose them to mean. Colonel Aureliano Buendía came home to Macondo. He came home different from any of his previous returns. He had come home before as a man in process, a man who was still becoming the colonel, who was accumulating the distance and the legend in stages, who retained something of Aureliano the goldsmith beneath the military surface. This time the goldsmith was further away. The distance was more complete. He was, in the fullest sense, the colonel now, a man who had fought 32 armed uprisings and lost them all, who had survived everything the world could direct at him, and who had signed a peace treaty that he considered a dishonor, and for which he held himself personally responsible. He went to his workshop. He made goldfish. He had made them before, had made them in the early period of his solitude, before the war, as a craftsman's occupation, with the specific attention of a person who finds in precise work a quality of focus that keeps the interior quiet. He made them now with a different quality, methodically, repetitively, with the specific character of a man performing an action not for its results, but for the action itself. He made 25 goldfish. When he had made 25, he melted them down and made them again. The same fish, melted and remade, over and over, with the patience of a man who has decided that the only work available to him that has any integrity is work whose product disappears. Ursula watched this. She watched it without comment for some time, the way she watched Amarantis' black cloth, with the specific attention of someone who understands that some things require witnessing rather than intervention. Then she said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Making fish." She said, "And then?" He said, "Melting them." She looked at him for a moment. She said, "Aureliano?" He said, "Yes." She said nothing further. She went back to the kitchen. Pietro Crespi killed himself. He did this on a Thursday, neatly, in his music shop among the instruments he maintained and the students he taught and the pianola he had installed in the Buendía house years before. He had been, in the years since Rebecca's marriage, a man defined by the withdrawal of the thing he had organized his life around, still present, still functional, still giving lessons and maintaining instruments, but with the specific quality of someone who has lost the animating purpose and has not found another. When they found him he had put the music shop in order first. This was noted by those who knew him as characteristic, the last act of a meticulous man, an act that contained, in its thoroughness, both the personality and the grief simultaneously. Amaranta received the news with the expression of a woman who has been holding something for a very long time, and has just been told that the thing she was holding has broken. She went to her room. She sewed for 3 days without stopping, not productively, not making anything in particular, just sewing, the needle moving through cloth with the mechanical focus of someone who needs something to do with their hands while their interior arranges itself around a new reality. On the 3rd day she stopped. She looked at the black cloth on her hand. She understood, perhaps for the first time with complete clarity, what the black cloth meant, what it had always meant, what it was going to continue to mean for the rest of her life. It was not mourning, exactly. It was something more permanent. It was the specific mark of a woman who had interfered with someone else's happiness and had, in interfering, destroyed what she had wanted to preserve. She did not remove the cloth. She had never intended to remove it. The next generation was becoming visible. Arcadio, the son of Jose, Arcadio the eldest and the girl from the gypsy caravan, raised in the Buendía house, educated by Father Nicanor, was taking on responsibilities in Macondo. He had been appointed the civil and military leader of the town during the war, a position of authority that had given him the opportunity to demonstrate, with complete consistency, the Buendía family trait that Ursula had identified and not yet fully articulated. He was solitary. He was obsessive. He had the specific quality of concentrated intensity that the Buendía men displayed, directed, in Arcadio's case, toward authority rather than science or war or gold, but recognizable in its character as the same thing. He was also cruel in ways that surprised even a town that had grown accustomed to Buendía extremes. He was executed at the end of the war. He was shot against a wall in the early morning, with the composure of a man who had been told he was going to die and had decided, in the time between the telling and the event, to conduct himself in a way that demonstrated something. What he demonstrated was the Buendía capacity for dignity in the face of extreme circumstances, a capacity that had been displayed before, and would be displayed again, across generations, with the consistency of a trait that does not change regardless of what it is asked to face. He said, before the shots, "Long live the Liberal Party." He was shot. Ursula buried him. She buried Arcadio the way she had buried her husband, practically, without collapse, with the specific composure of a woman who has been burying people for a long time, and has learned that the burial is not the grief, and the grief is not the burial, and both must be honored separately. She went back to the house. The house was full of people, grandchildren of various degrees of clarity in terms of parentage, the offspring of the expanding Buendía network, young faces that contained, in various combinations, the features she had been looking at for decades. She looked at them. She thought, they all have the same look. Something in the eyes. Something in the way they hold themselves. She had been thinking about the pattern for months, the sense that each generation reenacted what the previous generation had enacted, that the solitude passed down like a physical trait, that what looked like progress was a circle. She was now ready to articulate it more precisely. She thought, we are trapped, all of us, in the same story. She thought, and I do not know how the story ends. She went to make lunch. The goldfish circled in Aureliano's workshop. Macondo grew. New families arrived. New houses were built. The village that had been founded by Jose Arcadio Buendía in a dream was now a town with a government, and a church and a school and a market, and the particular complexity of a place that has been accumulating people and their histories for long enough that the original simplicity is no longer visible except in the stories of the very old. And the Buendía family sat at the center of it, solitary, intense, loving each other in the specific way of people who love each other and cannot connect, who reach toward each other and find the distance between them unchanged, who are bound together by blood and separated by the specific quality of the solitude that runs through them all. 100 years of it, thought Ursula. 100 years, and we are still the same. Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Chapter 9 of 100 Years of Solitude, by Gabriel García Márquez. In Chapter 10, the pattern continues and deepens. A new Aureliano is born, one of the 17 sons of Colonel Aureliano Buendía, each named Aureliano, each carrying something of their father's intensity and their father's distance. And the Buendía house receives a visitor who will change everything, a man who comes with a business proposition, and with the specific quality of someone who represents a future that Macondo is not prepared for. Chapter 10 is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new chapter arrives every week.